Hi everyone. Well, it's been a bit of time since my last reading, but I've only just gotten over a 2-week long cold. I didn't want to try reading anything with the bad cough I was having, but now I'm fully recovered, and I'm ready to start doing what I said I was going to do on here. First, it's finishing up Octaves Beyond. Now, in the time I've been on break from that story, the author has finished it, so I should have no problem just cranking the rest of it out. There's 6 more chapters, and they're still mostly short, so depending on what I feel like by the end, I'll try to do 3 in one vid, 3 in another. So, I'll just say thanks to my subscribers, and I hope you keep enjoying. Chapter 4. Rest. Shade arrived home that night exhausted. After going over the piece, they had rewritten several parts of it to empower the cello and give the piano less of a leading part. He didn't mind, though. Octavia was more skilled in this particular case than he was, and he wanted the original music that he had heard to shine on people. He sat at the piano and looked at the keys for some time. Finally, he gave up, and began playing a song he had heard several days ago. The part was simple, but it drove to the core of his thoughts at the moment. It was also one of the few songs he could actually sing, and sing it he did. It went something like this. When I find myself in times of trouble, Celestia shines the sun on me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, her sister Luna comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, ah, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. Shade blinked. There was more to the song, but he didn't feel like continuing at the moment. He turned, leaving the music on the piano, and went into his kitchen. He fixed himself a quick snack of wheatgrass and tap water, and headed to bed. The piano still seemed to echo through his mind. Octavia was ready to fall over after Shade left. Her hooves hurt from pressing the strings, and her four-legged knees hurt from bending to play the cello. Shade was certainly a skilled musician, and he had the same spark in his eyes that she felt whenever she played music. She was curious as to how he had earned his cutie mark. She distinctly remembered how she had gotten hers. She smiled.
Perhaps I'll tell him that story tomorrow.
She walked around her house, unsure of what to do with herself. It was a common problem she faced after playing for excessive amounts of time. She found herself unable to focus on anything. She gathered her thoughts and tried to focus them. She was less than successful.
Maybe I should take a vacation and distance myself from music for a while. Somewhere quiet.
She let out a bell-like laugh.
Ponyville it is, then. Maybe I'll invite Shade as well.
She blinked and frowned. She had just thought his nickname.
We really shouldn't get too close. I mean, we should be friends, but we shouldn't be...
She shook her head. Romance had never been something she considered as important in her life. That wasn't to say she'd never had cult friends, but she simply didn't take it seriously.
Positively silly, I think. But still, a lot of the best music in the world comes from emotions like love.
Her hooves tapped a beat as she walked into her room. She was unable to do almost anything without noticing some sort of musical connection, but she didn't even consider it as she lay down on her bed. Ponyville wasn't a place she played music for very often. In fact, one of the only times she actually played there was when she went for vacation. Since she was an independent artist, and a classical one at that, she could vacation when and where she liked. She yawned.
I'll call and make reservations tomorrow. Maybe they'll give me a discount.
Finally, she fell asleep. A stage light shone on her as hundreds, no, thousands of ponies watched. She sat on a lone stool, left center stage. Her bow was already coated in resin, her cello already tuned. The crowd watched in silence. She put the bow to the strings, but paused. A light had come on at another point on the stage. A black Pegasus with purple streaks in his mane was at the piano. He smiled over his shoulder at her, his eyes twinkling, and began to play. Octavia felt her hoof move and match his pace. They were playing together, a simple, trilling melody. Then she began to complicate it. He followed easily. The music became more and more complicated as they continued, until it reached an epic climax. She sighed, her delight silent to all but herself. Finally the playing ended. They both stood and bowed, looking at each other from the corners of their eyes. Octavia burst awake, her mane frazzled and messy. She blinked, and realized that she was coated in cold sweat. Light was shining through her window, warming her gently. She looked at her notebook, and placed her face in her hooves. How could she possibly write any sort of music to compare with that dream? Shade stretched as he awoke, looking around his darkened room. He opened the blinds, allowing light to shine on his face before he began his day. He then moved to the living room. Octavia had called earlier that day, letting him know she was going to spend a week in Ponyville, and that he was invited to join her there. He had made several joking comments, which she had struck down rather irritably, but agreed to her invitation. There was no reason for him not to go, after all, and it would be an enjoyable experience. The quiet pace of Ponyville was to his liking. When he arrived, Shade immediately wanted to go for a walk in the nearby Everfree Forest. However, Octavia had wanted to meet him at a nearby hotel, so that he would know where she was staying. As it turned out, they were staying in the same hotel, but on different floors. Octavia was tuning her instrument when Shade knocked. She smiled when she saw him, and told him of her plans.
I want to play a small concert here, but not in the town hall. Actually, I don't want to plan it at all. I just want to go out onto Main Street and play.
Shade grinned at the suggestion. Seems like a brilliant idea. I don't suppose you know where I can get a piano, though.
I already talked to a certain pink resident of town. She'll have a piano there. Not a grand piano, of course, but a piano nonetheless.
Excellent. When do you want to do this?
The end of the week. We can spend some time just talking. I don't like to perform with people I don't know.
Shade smiled and placed his four-legged knee on the side of the door, looking confident and feigning seductiveness. Why, Octavia, are you asking me on a date? She snorted and shut the door before yelling out to him,
10 sharp tomorrow morning, Sugar Cube Corner.
Octavia blushed behind the door, trying not to snort too loudly as he walked down the hallway.
A date? He wishes. But then again, I suppose it sort of is. Besides, he's quite a big fan, if he wrote down a music sheet like he did. And he's got quite the flair for music. Ah, what am I thinking? I'm here to relax, not to consider romances.
Chapter 5. This is How You Write a Love Song. Shade glared at himself in the mirror. He didn't look bad, per se, he just didn't look like himself. A fancy suit, a bow tie, and a hat to go with. The suit blended right into his coat, but he felt it was all wrong. He shook the clothes off. I'll just go bareback, I guess. He never felt quite right when he was dressed up. Besides, who wanted to get dressed all fancy for what he had planned? Octavia had suggested going out, and he had suggested a picnic on a nearby hill that overlooked Ponyville. She had kindly agreed, to his delight. There's certainly something different about her. Shade couldn't decide what it was, but Octavia captured him in a way that others had not. He had seen many musical ponies, and had heard so much music in his life, yet Octavia was the one that captured his attention. He saw something in her that he couldn't quite explain, but neither could he explain his love for music, and he didn't question that. It wasn't good or bad, it just was, and he accepted that. He gave himself one last look in the mirror, and stepped out. When Shade got outside, he found that the whole town seemed to be buzzing. Probably because of Octavia, he thought to himself. He listened to several conversations. Have you heard? Octavia's in town. One of her vacations, no big deal. Yeah, but she brought this new Pegasus pianist into town as well. I heard that Celestia's coming to town this week. Shade's ears perked up, and he slowed down at this. Yeah, that's right. Word is that she wants to check on the elements of harmony, but some pony from Canterlot told me that she was going to see Octavia and that new Pegasus perform. Who said they were even going to perform? Oh, come on, of course they will. Do you think ponies like that can stay away from their talents for that long? Shade grinned. The pony had hit the nail on the head. It was certainly true that he couldn't stay away from music for too long. He continued walking, the grassy hill in the distance clear to his vision. Octavia was relaxing on the hill, looking over the small town below. It wasn't the highest up she'd been, but it offered a spectacular view. She sighed as she listened to the forest. It was too quiet. There was no buzz of sound, no offer of a rhythm. She began tapping her front hooves just to have noise, right before a black Pegasus swooped out of the sky, silent as a cat. He flashed a toothy grin. She smiled back somewhat uncertainly. He dropped a small brown basket on the blanket that she had brought. He then laid down on his stomach and looked over Ponyville. Octavia stood next to him. She spoke first.
"It's pretty up here, but too quiet."
"You think so? I think it's rather loud." Octavia glared at him. It was rather clearly silent.
"You realize there isn't a single sound up here, right?"
Shade chuckled. "I know. You don't see it?"
"See what?"
Shade turned and looked at her. After a few moments his ears drooped slightly. "Oh, I guess I am the only one. I thought you, of all people—"
"What do you see?"
she demanded, frustrated. He looked at her intently until her gaze softened.
"I apologize," she said. "I didn't mean—"
"It's all right," said Shade. "Maybe you just need help." He stood up next to her. He wasn't the tallest of ponies, but he stood several inches taller than her. She found blood rushing to her face as she inhaled his scent, but quickly drove her emotions back. "Look out there," he said. She turned her head, looking over the valley. "Look at the scenery. They've told me that ponies built this land through hard work, but that's not what I see. I see a spectacular symphony that came to life." Octavia continued looking, and he spoke, his eyes growing hazy. "The mountains are like mighty crescendos. I see fermatas in every tree, a chord in every animal. It's like the greatest orchestra in the universe came together and played the world into existence." Octavia now saw it, but beyond that she heard the music. Instruments being tuned, notes bursting with life and power. It was beautiful and terrible, joyous and saddening all at once. She felt overcome with emotion. Shade turned to her. "My special talent isn't playing music, Octavia. My special talent is understanding it, seeing it and hearing it in everything. It's the best thing in the world." Octavia's eyes glimmered with tears.
"That's so amazing."
Shade blinked.
"I'm sorry, did I say that out loud?"
she asked. Shade smiled again, his teeth glinting in the setting sun. She smiled back and leaned toward him. He leaned in towards her. Their eyes locked as their lips slowly closed the distance between each other. They were mere inches from one another when—
"No,"
Octavia said. She leaned away again. The blood that was previously pounding through her body began to slow.
"No, I can't."
Shade was confused. "But why not?"
"I just can't. Soon, maybe, but not right now."
Shade watched her for a moment, and nodded his head. They stayed there until Luna's moon shone far overhead, simply sitting in quiet companionship. Chapter 6. A Reference Guide to Equestrian Music. Octavia awoke Friday morning and turned to her musical notebook. She wrote down a piece that she wasn't sure was entirely hers. For the first time in many years, she added text to the book.
"Shade inspired this piece with his view of the world. Nobody else can see it like him until they are shown, just as I was."
She lifted the pen from the page and closed the book.
"Oh, Celestia," she thought to herself, "I'm crushing on Shade."
She had not allowed him to kiss her because she didn't want to become involved. Or so she thought at the time. Now she realized how much she did want to become involved. Her thoughts strayed to him as she went about her morning business. The black coat, the strong shoulders and wings, how the violet streaks in his mane seemed to glow under the moonlight.
"No, no, no."
She returned herself to the present. She didn't have time for romance, not now. She had heard the rumors around Ponyville. Celestia was supposedly coming to visit on Friday to see them perform, and the whole town was buzzing about it. She was ready, however. The song she and Shade had written together had set itself in her mind, making it virtually impossible to make a mistake while playing it. She looked at her cello, directly across from her bed.
"Perhaps an easy practice is in order."
She stepped to it and opened the case. After coating her bow in resin and making sure the instrument was in tune, she began playing Ode to Joy, a piece by a classical master. It felt more powerful on the deep-voiced instrument. She then switched gears, playing the opening part of the Fifth Symphony by the same writer. She managed to push out fifths on the cello with a clever tuning trick and some impressive hoofwork. She then moved on to more modern styles, playing everything from Manhattan 2017 to Enter Sandpony. Although few of the songs fit her usual style, she felt it important to have at least some part of many songs memorized. Half of the enjoyment she got from playing the cello was to see ponies' faces light up at a tune they recognized. It was enthralling to have someone cheer for a song they knew, and it sent a powerful jolt through her to hear ponies applauding and singing, tapping along to a song that they could remember for whatever reason. She smiled at the thought of the princess's smile when she heard her and Shade play together.
"It will be incredible," she thought to herself.
Shade sat at the piano, unsure of what to do with it. He had brought a small training keyboard so that he didn't have to go without practice, but now he wasn't sure what to play. Finally he sighed and reached into a saddlebag next to his chair. "I'll just play some simple parts, I suppose." He took the sheet music out and placed it on the piano. There was a lot of it, so he flipped to a random song and played it. It was Piano Colt, a favorite of his. He sang along, enjoying the feeling of the keys beneath his hooves. He also sang more of Let It Be, and one called Magic Colt. He played many more. He felt that the piano was one of the most versatile instruments a pony could play, and was more naturally played than stringed instruments such as the violin, guitar, or cello. Not that I'll ever tell Octavia that, he thought to himself, smiling slightly. When he finished, he turned away from the piano. He felt tired after last night. Explaining his way of viewing the world to Octavia was mind-numbing. He was sure that his message had gotten through to her, because she had seemed so affected by it. She kept looking at everything with wide eyes afterwards. Despite his success, though, he felt that he had bared his soul, even rubbed a corner of it against hers. Whatever emotional boundaries and privacy he had enjoyed before with Octavia were now gone. She had seen his deepest thoughts and feelings. "It's like just by telling her what I did, I revealed everything about myself," he thought. The scope of it scared him, but it also made him happier. He felt that he now had gained a friend that understood every thought and feeling he had. He hoped to gain more from it than that, however. "She's everything I've ever wanted. Everything I need. She's certainly the most gifted musician I've ever met." He felt that if anyone could really, truly understand the way his mind worked, it would be someone like Octavia. He had seen other ponies that were skilled with music, but she had a spark, a fire for it, that he had never seen matched by any but himself. It put all other musicians to shame when her passion was considered, much like himself. Still, he felt conflict in himself. Just because she understands my mind doesn't mean that she has the same thoughts and feelings that I do. And she still rejected me. It wasn't a complete rejection, so he wasn't willing to give up. He decided then that he would do everything it took to win Octavia's affection, and hang the consequences of any mistakes he made. Confidence flowing from him, he headed for the door, ready to attack his day and allow the new spark he felt for a certain some-pony to control his actions. Well, alright. I'm gonna stop here and do the final 3 chapters next time. I've heard from a couple of people who are excited to hear me read more, so after being away for so long. Just tune in next time for the conclusion of this story. Thanks again for listening, every pony.